Welcome to another episode of Spekit Sauces, where we learn the secret sauces to empower teams from today's leading enablement, operation, learning, and digital transformation leaders. I'm super excited to be here today. My name is Andrew Bothwell. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Spekit. I'm joined here from two great guys from two phenomenal companies, Joe from Greenhouse and Alex from Outreach. Super excited to have you guys here today. Before we introduce you guys, a little about today's session. The last year has been just a tremendous amount of effort and change in regards to how revenue organizations are leading and driving their teams overall. And one of the biggest things that happen at the beginning of every single year is sales kickoff. And so with that in mind, we're bringing these two great guys to talk through some of those strategies on how we are going remote this coming year in 2021 and all the different types of challenges and how we're overcoming those to handle and deploy one of the best kickoffs that most of these organizations are trying to drive this coming year. So super excited to talk to you guys, get your guys' thoughts and strategies around these from two great organizations. I'm going to kick it over to you, Joe, a little bit about your background and a little about Greenhouse as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me as well, Spekit. My background started at corporate executive board a handful of years ago in Washington, D.C., and has since grown as an account executive into a great role at Exactly Corp and opening up their DC office and being a part of that team. And that's really where I got my experience in sales enablement. Had a great opportunity to not only sell there, but launch a new product and then take over the sales enablement department and grow it through IPO and even through acquisition from Vista. And that's where it took me to my journey with Greenhouse, where we're helping companies hire for what next and be better at hiring. And in doing so, really taking on a lot of new challenges and working to grow that organization and become, a best-in-class organization, and not only helping you with your recruiting efforts, but then internally helping really upskill our employees so that they can best service our customers and prospects. So really excited to be here, and thanks again for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, welcome. I can't wait to hear some of those stories from even back in the CEV days. I had the opportunity to work with a couple legends from CEV back in the day, so hopefully we can share some of those stories along the way here. Alex, Outreach. What a great company, great story. Congratulations on some of the new product releases most recently as well. Talk to us a little bit about yourself and sales kickoff and Outreach overall.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me on here. So my name is Alex Kremer. So I am one of the sales leaders here at Outreach. I actually lead part of our corporate and our enterprise team out in New York on the East Coast. I've been at Outreach for about 3 years now. Prior to this, I was actually at Microsoft. Started out here as an account executive. Now I moved into management. In terms of what Outreach is, so we're the leading sales engagement platform within the space. I think it's really unique what we do, especially right now where all these field sellers have become inside sellers. We're figuring out how to respond to a quarantine COVID-esque type of world, and we're really helping companies and organizations transform, not in just terms of how they engage with their prospects in a more methodical way, but also in terms of how they're getting feedback from the marketplace in terms of what's working, what's not, how can we make sure to provide leadership with the right data to just drive the right things. So I think, talking about SKO, there's a lot of things that are changing. I think a lot of organizations are saying, what the heck should we do? So I'm excited to dive into it here with both of you guys. And, besides, sharing what we're doing, learning what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited for your perspective. As a frontline leader, manager, oftentimes we're talking about, sales kickoff. Sometimes it's referred to as the head of revenue, CRO, VP of sales. It's their wedding, their annual wedding, their annual prom. Everybody's gearing up for it. But at the end of the day, as we think about sales kickoff, what happens after it? How do you go reinforce some of these strategies as a frontline manager and make sure that all these great ideas and new cadences and everything that's being rolled out are adhered to, and we're getting the most out of it. So super excited to get your perspective on that as well. So thank you guys again for joining us. I think to kick us off, as we talked about SKO going virtual this year, I think one of the biggest things that we're going to miss potentially, although there could be some horror Zoom story or that story that people are going to be talking about later on in their career or next year. I think we hear about some of these kids on some of these Zoom meetings and just in the corporate world as well. I call it the horror stories, but I want to ask you guys to have some fun to kick this thing off is, without us having that big partying gala or, that happy hour that night of, Talk to me about maybe one. We'll keep it to one, not two. I won't put you guys too big on the spot, but that one horror story from the past, from a previous kickoff. Let's keep it PG, maybe PG-13. I'm a family guy here. That we can kick us off with that you guys can recall from the previous kickoff.
Yeah. I can go first. I have a really, this was, I think it was like 5-6 years or so ago. It was the last night of, I think it was a 5-day kickoff. It was in Atlanta, and it was the final big party to kind of send everybody off on their way. And usually at those parties, there's some sort of libations or drinks that are kind of, being spread around. And we all had a very good time, particularly one of my good friends and also one of my coworkers, so much so that, well, let's just say he lost his key card. Somehow he lost his clothes except for his underwear, and he got locked outside of his door. And he happened to actually fall asleep on his door with his back to it. And of course, the one person who actually finds him on her way out to catch her flight the next day is his manager. So we had some good stories over breakfast. He did not get fired, but it was not a good look by any means for him. But good laughs all around.
And you are a good man for not sharing that name right now. I appreciate that.
Not me though.
That's up to the audience to decide that. Joe, how about yourself?
Yeah, I was thinking through this one. There's definitely a couple stories that come to mind. Something that was really unique and fun that we did it exactly during my time there is we'd have a company lip sync battle where the different teams would come together and go up on stage and actually perform a lip sync, and even some of our managers would really sing because they just had great voices. But what happened is during that lip sync, actually, one of our employees had set down a drink on top of the PA system and had been knocked over and completely fried the entire kind of performance system that we had set up. So teams had been preparing for weeks to come on stage and do their lip sync battle, and we had to kind of do a frantic, repair, find new speakers, get everything set up again, and then also pay for the system that was ruined. But at the end of the day, we got it back together. But it was kind of one of those heart-dropping moments because it's such a banner event for that organization and so much fun that it's kind of what you're looking forward to as you're leading into SKO. So we were able to get that together. But as someone that was running that event and watching it go down, my heart definitely dropped. But we were able to pull it back together.
Oh, my heart just dropped hearing that story right now in itself. Being that,
yeah, when the music shuts off, it doesn't matter what event you're at, people are going to notice.
But the agony and pain I feel for your guys' team that, to your point, that the production that goes into a kickoff with the audio, the lights, the sound, and the preparation of all just the technical aspects of it. I think a lot of people overlook that and sometimes forget about that. Gosh, I don't know. I've had the opportunity over the last 15 years to, be at SKOs with Zendesk, Salesforce, and some other great organizations as well, and get to travel some of the world for these as well. And so my heart just stopped for a second, just hearing that story itself. Appreciate you guys both sharing. So let's kind of jump into this a little bit more. Obviously, a lot is different this year. And I think, that's probably a great segue into thinking about how are you guys preparing differently and how are your organizations preparing differently this year? And maybe Joe, you can kind of kick us off on this topic just to that point, all the typical preparation, it's just going to be a lot different as we think about this virtual year ahead of us.
Right. Up front, I'm thinking, a big highlight for our upcoming kickoff is that it's a big collaborative event. We're tapping into, resources across the organization and actually doing a company-wide kickoff and then breaking out additional kickoffs by segment to hopefully reduce a lot of the concerns and things that I'm sure a lot of organizations are experiencing, things like Zoom fatigue and being realistic with how many hours you're going to spend on a call each day and what type of content and focus is going to be there. How are you going to separate, motivation and future outlook of the organization while also reinforcing some critical processes. So one of the things that we're doing up front is being, breaking up the sessions and starting with the company session, starting with the company level OKRs, and then breaking out into organizational specific kickoffs and how they kind of roll up into those org level OKR. So providing the company-wide context and then breaking out in sessions to follow.
That is awesome. That is great to hear. I think Zoom fatigue is a big piece of this, right? I think that's one of the biggest things. You know, even myself talking to some other leaders in the space is like, how do you avoid that? You can't keep somebody in front of the screen. The other piece I love too, is something that we're actually talking about at Spekit as well, is how do we break out into maybe a couple different sessions, especially from just the company alignment component of things, keeping everybody on the same page, just not your sellers or your customer success managers, it's an entire company. And I know Alex at Outreach, Manny and the team have been very focused on that. What are you kind of seeing from you guys internally at Outreach, how you guys are preparing, how it might be different from years past?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And it's kind of similar to what Joe was saying here. We call it an RKO, so it's a revenue kickoff. So it's not going to be with our entire company. But, you know, the typical RKOs in the past, they've been, 3 or 4 days. You're there for 8 hours a day. You're getting training, you're getting all that sort of stuff. And then there's usually some sort of party or happy hour at the end. Just like Joe said, there is some serious Zoom fatigue. And just keeping people engaged for that long is really difficult. So we've actually, this year, we're going to be doing 3 days and then three hours every single day. So it's not going to be the full day allocated towards this. And it's going to be kind of, kind of some commercial breaks, like different types of stuff like that, just to make sure that you're able to kind of keep it live sort of thing. We've broken it up really into 3 main categories that we're going to be having here. One, which is also, kind of my favorite, the stuff that I care about most is all around mental health, all around kind of who are you becoming in this process, a little bit of motivation and an inspiration sort of thing. It's like, hey, here's what to look forward to. And also here's an opportunity to hold us accountable to, especially being in sales, how do you first make sure you take care of yourself? And then that will inevitably allow you to take care of your customers and your teammates in a better type of way. So there's gonna be a lot of really good stuff. We're doing that. The second one we're doing, I think the big thing that people have missed out on a lot this year is just being with the team. I mean, I know like here at Outreach, our office culture is so awesome. Like there's so much energy, there's a buzz. If you're on the sales floor, you're hearing people talking every single day and fist bumping each other, and people have missed out on that. So we're really going to create a space where, if there's the East Coast team and the West Coast team, and maybe you haven't gotten the opportunity to just connect on a one-on-one or on a team basis with them, let's create some space to allow that sort of stuff to happen, to talk about what's going well, opportunities for improvement, whatever it might be. So we got mental, we got team, and then it's also, we're going to be bringing in some speakers as well. So some speakers around some analysts in terms of what's happening with the sales engagement space. We're having a board member, we're having a customer kind of come in and speak to us. It's going to be less focused on the training of like, hey, here's the new sales skills, here's the new pitch. Like you can kind of do that stuff in other things. This is meant to say, let's become educated within our space, and let's make sure we're providing the most amount of value and at least knowledge share to our customers as well. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
No, I love the mental health priority with, again, everything going on in the past like 10 to 12 months and going forward. Huge priority, I think, for all our organizations. I think a lot of the leaders and board members and everybody's talking about it. And also the other piece too, I think one of the, I've done this at 2 different organizations or 3 actually organizations, bring in the board member for rest of the team to hear like their vision and why they invested and what they see going on in the market. I think super helpful and motivating for the teams at the end of the day as well. Joe, you kind of talked about like the breakout too of like the Zoom and kind of breaking down the fatigue. What are like some of the things you guys are trying to do to alleviate that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely a mental health component. I didn't want to steal your thunder there, Alex. And of course, some of the other things that we want to focus on is, leadership training is a big thing for us. Making sure that we can help arm the managers to reinforce the strategies that we're rolling out is really important. And I think a layer that sometimes can be overlooked. And then also just some ways to improve their skills around coaching. Coaching virtually is a new challenge, making sure that they're able to connect and give them the support that they need. And then also, I think, we're seeing it as a great opportunity to reset on some of our communication strategy. I think that's a huge theme as well as we're dispersed, is what is our operating cadence, revisiting kind of what are the meetings that we're having and what is the agenda, what are the outcomes that we're trying to drive, so that, as you think about Zoom fatigue, you have a limited window of time that you want to spend with your people, and being intentional about that time, not only from sales kickoff, but then being able to show them what is the platform for communication across the rest of the year is another thing we're drilling down on. And we're kind of calling that the PPT, the people, processes, and tools piece. So that will be a focus of our session as well too, just so that we can reset the line of communications and really give that clarity to our organization, which I think is a big theme for this year for us.
Awesome. One thing that just kind of stuck out and I would want to double click into, anybody that's worked in my revenue organizations know this word cadence. I use it all the time. Like, I think selling is all about cadence. What are some of those things that you guys are doing from, setting up these meetings to be more productive and at a better cadence? What are you guys changing that is going to be different this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that we have is an agile product release process here at Greenhouse. So there's constantly product updates and improvements coming out. So creating a platform and more of a set cadence on how we're updating folks around those changes so that we could stay very sharp as the product team continues to meet the demands of our customers. And another big thing that we're looking at is just, assigning ownership ahead of time. I think, preparing for all of these virtual meetings is a huge undertaking. And if you're somebody that's in front of the camera, like, we are right now, having a really set schedule of when people are presenting so that they could prepare and put together some content is critical. So, signing some of our leadership, some of our sales leadership up to run these short 30-minute sessions that are just more focused on best practices. And, people like you, Andrew, that have been selling for years and years and years, what can we do to kind of highlight you and keep you, sharing best practices, not just with your specific team, if you were a frontline manager, but the broader group across our different segments. So just an idea of what we're trying to do, which is, set up an agenda and then pre-select people so that they could really set aside time to prepare for these meetings in between all of those more routine cadence sales, one-on-ones, things like that.
Awesome. Alex, I know we were talking ahead of this a little bit about some of those, the strategies around just cadence, but keeping people engaged. You guys had some great examples, not only like AEs, but SDRs. We have to think about the whole gamut of these revenue teams, right? There's a lot of people, different points in their career and experiences. You just pointed out, Joe, years and years and years and years of me selling. Thank you for calling that out. But with that, Alex, like, what are some of the things, how do you guys plan on keeping these people engaged? And what are some of the strategies that you guys are deploying on the upcoming revenue kickoff?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think learning how to keep people engaged is a really hard sort of thing, especially if people are just talking at you throughout the entire day. There's very easy to be slacking, emailing, doing a lot of other stuff. And so the question becomes is, how can you get people to be not just engaging, but participating and helping, lead other leaders, so to speak, is kind of the phrase that we always say. How can we have our leaders leading other leaders, whether or not they have the title with that? One of the things that is very much our friend that we have been utilizing absolutely ton, I've been using it on my team, is the Zoom breakout sessions like we alluded to earlier. And so one of the things that we're talking about doing is we're actually having different media invites, and similar to what you guys are saying, where we will break out an AE, a customer success manager, an SDR, and kind of, probably about 10 people in a group from various types of roles and capacities. And there will be kind of like a leader within each one who will just be kind of guiding the conversation. And we'll then from that do actually a breakout session. From there, it would actually be a one-on-one. And we'll do things like pair interviews, which is really, unique and very different. And also kind of forces people to show a little bit of vulnerability, where it's 40 minutes in this one-on-one breakout session. It's 20 minutes each, where there's a list of questions that each person goes down and just asks the other one, right? And it's questions like, hey, 1 year from now, what do you think is possible within your personal development? 1 year from now, what kind of makes your heart and your soul kind of speak to you a little bit more? Where do you feel like you're struggling from the past year, and what are things that you're going to be doing kind of moving forward? It's an opportunity to really create strong, just, intentionality around a relationship. And they'll do that. And, when it's 20 minutes, it's you're not, responding to them. You're just really listening to be engaged. And then you kind of come back to the entire group and you share what you learned about the other person, right? And it's stuff that typically you wouldn't be talking about. And just like forcing people to say 1 year from now, if you got all your hopes and dreams, where would you be? Like when you're forced to ask that question, you're like, where the heck would I be, sort of thing. And it's cool to hear from other people as well. So we've been doing stuff like that. We've been doing in our breakout sessions, things like Rosebud Thorn, which, for those who've done it, Rose is, hey, what's going really well? Bud is where's an opportunity for growth, or just kind of, improving yourself. And then Thorn is, hey, if I prick it, my finger might bleed a little bit, right? I'm kind of struggling with this. And again, it creates an environment for people to kind of take off their mask, to put the numbers aside real quick, whatever it might be, and just be like, what's up? Like, how are you doing, sort of thing. And when people feel heard, they feel seen, and there's a space to, kind of share those things, people lean in, right? And it becomes a lot more about, we're investing to you as a person. And we know and we trust that the byproduct of that is most likely going to be revenue and quota attainment and that sort of thing. But let's make sure you are feeling good and feeling part of a team bigger than just yourself, part of a mission bigger than just yourself. So I got tons of other examples that we've been doing, and they're really fun, and people are leaning in with them.
No, I love it. I think, both what you guys are both sharing in regards to, this virtual year ahead, like how do you impact change at the end of the day, and how do you keep your teams engaged at the end of the day, whether remote or in person, is how do we keep people motivated on the vision as we go forward. So as we think about this follow-up to you, Joe, you talked a lot about cadence and the changes as you go into next year. How are you guys thinking about like the reinforcement of some of this stuff, and just like the follow-up, and maybe even like some of the tool sets that you guys are going to use to make sure that people stay engaged, are following some of this, updated cadences and just principles you guys are rolling out?
Yeah, great question, Andrew. I think one of the things that we're focusing on as we turn the corner into February, which will be following up our revenue kickoff, is what we're calling an acceleration summit, which is definitely more focused on those learning strategies and some of the new selling strategies that we want to roll out to the organization. So I think that's going to be a big platform to reinforce some of the activities that'll support the more revenue focused OKRs. And we'll try and do some fun activities baked in there as well too. I was actually speaking with one of my former coworkers and enablement leaders, Julie Brozick, and she's actually doing a voice competition, if you're familiar with the Voice TV show, where reps will be kind of pitching, a couple of selected reps will do their overview pitch over at Lean Data, and then the managers will turn around and hit the button when they feel that they've heard a crisp pitch around the organization. So we're definitely going to be doing some selling skills and focusing on that teaching motion and being able to provide that unexpected value for a prospect or a customer. So we'll definitely add in some competition to reinforce a lot of the things that we roll out in January.
What a great idea. I love that. That just kind of, Alex, I think there's some additional ideas you have for some of your breakout rooms now as well.
Definitely.
Well, we're coming up on time, and we want to make sure we save time for some of the questions from the audience here as well. Appreciate your guys' feedback and just thoughts on all of this. I think a couple of last questions as we wrap up here. Sales kickoff, called it the wedding and the prom of the year as well. It's also a very big, monumental moment for a lot of the individual contributors, right? You get to come up on stage, hug your CEO, CRO, VP of sales, high fives. It's that moment of like, everybody knows I put all this blood, sweat, and tears into the opportunity over the last year. How are you guys thinking about, highlighting some of these top performers, and what are some of the strategies around that this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've actually been talking about this a lot because, like you said, people, work their butts off, right, to get to this. And there's a great feeling of being on stage, getting that plaque, shaking your CEO or CRO's hand, whatever it might be. And, it's hard to create that space now. And especially, President's Club, typically you go to Hawaii, Cabo, whatever it might be, travel is probably not going to happen, or most likely not going to happen. So what we've talked about doing is a couple of things. Number one, actually having a private breakout session with just some of our leaders, like our CEO or our CRO, where you're actually going to be sent something during that session, like a cool lunch or something along those lines. It's kind of be like an ask me anything, or just an opportunity to honor everybody with that, and just to highlight, like, hey, you are a leader here, and you've really shown and went above and beyond here. We've also talked a lot about, beyond just the materialistic, here's, $5,000, here's, a trip, whatever it might be, which, don't get me wrong, I'm down for that sort of stuff as well. But it's also, a lot of people want to be invested into. They want to be acknowledged and then invest into, say, hey, we've highlighted you as an up and coming star here. You're a leader here. We want to make you feel like you're even improving and growing beyond that. And so we've talked about doing, a lot of virtual leadership training for some of these. I think that's become a lot more common, especially from COVID, whether it be Tony Robbins events. We work with an organization called Abundant. There's many different types of things that are out there that we say, hey, this could potentially be like a $5,000 ticket, and we want to honor you and send you there for a 2 to 3 day virtual type of event. And it just makes people say, like, hey, we care about you and we want to invest into you. And that feels good. I would say, at least for me personally, it feels good when leadership says that.
No, I totally agree. And love the personal investment piece, something that we're really big on. I'm really big on here at Spekit, something that we're doing for our ICs as we go forward, especially into 2021. How about you, Joe? What are you guys doing to obviously not having the stage, and as you noted before, the audio getting spilt on and burning out? What are you guys doing this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a Q4 spiff going on, so that'll be a great way to reward some people for some more recent efforts. So things like Chewy gift cards for all the new dog owners, a Peloton, some Airbnb change if you want a different change of office scenery. And then, of course, for our President's Club winners, one of our customers is Shinola, so we're going to be getting them some custom engraved watches just to recognize the top performers and give them something as a memorable piece, obviously highlighting a big milestone in their career.
That's awesome. I mean, the fact that you can walk around with that for the rest of your life and always remember that's awesome. And also partnering with the customers. I know one thing we'll be doing at our kickoff this year is bringing in some of our customers. I know Alex, Joe, we talked about that previously as well. And I think, Joe, you mentioned it, is, in these kickoffs, bringing in customers to tell their story has always been so impactful for the team to hear specifically from them, and be able to engage with them when they don't always get to do so, besides maybe reading a case study or watching a video. So super excited. Well, we have a couple minutes left here. Appreciate you guys tremendously for spending the time doing this today. It looks like we have a couple questions from the audience that we'll wrap up with here today. So first question we have here is, how are we dealing with teams across different time zones, especially as we think about international teams? Joe, maybe any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a growing Dublin office, so definitely relevant at Greenhouse. And there's an ideal time slot that we're just aiming for. And again, it kind of works to your advantage, right? That instead of you're doing these full 5-hour, 8-hour events, for some folks, it's a 2-hour session. So we're aiming for those earlier East Coast time zones, and going to focus on trying to hit that kind of that special golden window. And then, of course, record everything to be shared and reviewed. But through nature of having shorter sessions, we're able to kind of meet the differences in time zones.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, another strategy I've seen in the past too, or I've done as well, like that mid-year kickoff too, when you're not necessarily traveling, bringing everybody together, is a little bit more effort, but being able to kind of do the group together in the early morning hours where everybody's within the same working time zone or working hour, so to speak. And then, you go back and do the smaller breakouts per region as well. Definitely a lot of effort on the leadership, but at the end of the day, for me, I've always found it to be well worth the time and energy dedicated to those teams as well. Another question here we have from the crowd and audience is just like, what are some of the things we're doing to have fun? So I know we talked a little bit about the breakouts and stuff. Maybe Alex, any ideas or thoughts that you guys are coming to have some fun beyond just some of the breakouts and stuff?
Yeah. It's funny, when this stuff initially started, when we all were kind of on lockdown, I felt like we started doing so many virtual happy hours. Like we would typically do like 1 at tops 2 happy hours a week, like in normal ways. And then all of a sudden when COVID happened, we're doing a happy hour once a day, right? Just to try to keep up with people being connected. So we like that, but there's also a certain sense of like, let's do something unique. Let's do something different. So, we actually have, we're holding our virtual holiday party here, and we actually hired an organization to come and kind of be a host for that. And we're doing a few activities with them. We're doing some breakout sessions of, different types of things just to spice it up and to be completely different. We're also, for one of our sessions, I think we're going to be sending activities to the people's homes, or at least certain people in this particular group. So it's not arts and craft per se, but it is everybody open up the box now together and see what's in there. And then we got to create kind of like a fun and engaging kind of format here. So the happy hours are great, but we always like an activity to do and to engage with, especially for salespeople. Usually they're decently competitive. So we like to kind of stir up the pot just a little bit with that as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and I could jump in there too, Andrew. Some of the things that we've done, even just on meetings that aren't sales kickoffs, some of our managers, like Katie, does a great job of getting some fun facts. So like before you get on a call, you could share a fun fact, and then everybody can chat in instead of unmute themselves on who they think it is. Also, like your pump up theme song, like when you open up a Zoom meeting and there's some music pumping, you guess whose theme song it is, just as a way to kind of, 1, build some energy, and 2, get to know somebody and what makes them tick from a music perspective. And then something I did really that was a ton of fun when you think about sellers. It sounds childish because it is a child's game, but rock, paper, scissors. There's actually a way that you could do rock, paper, scissors through a Zoom meeting. If you put, hide participants with no video. It's a great way to kind of set up this activity where you rock, paper, scissors the person, next to you. If they beat you, you shut your video off, then you cheer them on in the chat until it gets down to like the last 2 people on the Zoom meeting. And when we did it in person, it was a huge hit. I think we had like the head of our product versus like an SDR up on stage battling for this gift card through rock, paper, scissors. And you got every single person that got beat cheering on those people that beat them. So it's a fun way to build some energy too.
We did that. I've done it a couple, but the one that most memorable was we were at Zendesk under Marcus Bragg, phenomenal revenue operational leader in the space. And we did that at one of our kickoffs, and it was an international kickoff, everybody in from the world, and it was a madhouse. And you just realize how competitive people are. Like even people outside the revenue organization that were helping put on the event, we had everybody in this big auditorium participate, and I will never forget. It gives me chills just thinking about it. So that's awesome. I love that idea, by the way, because I had not thought about that, of how you would do that over Zoom. So a great way to engage and get the blood flowing. Awesome. Guys, I really appreciate both of you guys being here today. Our audience, if you guys haven't, connect with Joe and Alex on LinkedIn. They share great content on a regular basis. Also great opportunity for you to ask some follow-up questions. We thank all of you guys for attending today. Hope you guys learned a lot today. If you have any additional questions, again, feel free to reach out to them. Please connect with me. I'm always sharing information on what's going on in the space as well, and always happy to answer questions off hours or even during hours as well. But we appreciate everybody. Have a great day. We'll talk to everybody soon. Take care.